What happened to you?
Morning,
Good
Chris.
morning, Anthony Franco. Which of my two dad jokes I just read to you was your favorite?
Yeah, we're skipping dad jokes this morning, Chris. I'm excited about the topic. I want to jump in to the topic, and we've got a great guest. So let's skip the dad jokes.
I can guarantee as a teaser, I'll sprinkle in a dad joke or two throughout the episode today as a moment of levity. Anthony, have you ever wondered if sharing your deepest convictions at work could make or break your company culture? I think you have probably wondered that. Probably.
I don't have any convictions.
That's fair enough. In 1902, Milton Hershey built more than a chocolate empire. He created an entire town based on his religious and social values. While some criticize his paternalistic approach, his commitment to fair wages, education, community well-being proved to be revolutionary. The company thrived not because it promoted specific beliefs, but because it translated values into tangible benefits for workers. Today, leaders face similar challenges in balancing personal convictions with professional responsibilities. Do you need me to define convictions, Anthony? You good?
No, I know the definition of the word. I just don't have any.
Today on How to Founder, Anthony, we're talking about navigating personal values in business leadership. I'm Chris Franks. With me today is my grumpy.
You're supposed to say
Anthony
handsome.
Franco. No, I see what you wrote in the notes.
All right.
I'll ad lib there. And joining us and is going to make us collectively more handsome is Robert Hunt. He brings over a decade of experience running CEO groups in DFW. He's earned the reputation as the accountability guy. I feel like maybe you should have like a badge, Robert. It's just like,
a jacket. He needs an accountability jacket.
Little bar down here at the bottom that says accountability.
The accountability guy. That's right. And wrote the book, Nobody Cares Until You Do. As executive coach, he helps leaders remove obstacles to peak performance while staying true to their authentic selves. Robert, welcome. Thank you. We're wading into deep waters today, Robert. Yes. Thank you for helping us navigate here. So let's just get out. Like, what do you think here? Should the values, my personal, religious, political, where do we draw the line? How should I think about this as a founder?
Yeah, we don't draw the line. We draw, what we do is we support a system that we want that directs the behavior. Instead of trying to make all the things that we legislate behavior by saying, don't do this, don't do that, we need to work more on creating a culture where people show respect and kindness and grace and mercy. All the things that we would say our religion wants us to be like. But we don't do that because we've had bad experiences or we're in a bad mood, we're frustrated, whatever. So we don't do a very good job of it. But what we really want to do is, instead of trying to legislate behavior for our employees of what they can and cannot talk about, we want to create a culture where the way they do it will enable us to talk about anything we want to talk about. And there's tons of examples of companies and cases and studies that have shown when you have a wide open door to good, healthy communication, creativity, inspiration, freedom, motivation, positivity, those things just grow, they take off. But when you start to put your thumb down on something because you're uncomfortable with it, that oppression causes people not to be creative, not to be productive, not to enjoy their time at work. Then they got to go somewhere else.
I think we just nailed the episode. All right, that's it for today's How to Founder. We're great. It's the way that you just described it is, I think, the positive way that we can frame up this challenge, which is you're suggesting that we need to create environments as leaders where people can bring their whole selves.
Yes. Yeah.
And everybody has different political, religious beliefs, and that is part of who they are as human beings, right? It's part of their journey. I think so much of the problem, Anthony, is sometimes we as founders, we are such strong personalities and such strong presences in our companies that sometimes our political beliefs, our religious beliefs, our just values in general tend to start to shape the culture of the company. Do you agree with that, Anthony?
Yeah, 100%. So I know founders that look. I think what Robert's saying is you need to be able to develop an environment where people can share. I think that starts with sharing yourself, which can get delicate because a lot of us do have stronger personalities. And so, if I talk about my faith at work, you have to do it in a way that leaves room for people that don't believe. It leaves room for open and honest conversation. First of all, it's good to do that as a leader, and we're taught as Christians, it's good to do it as a Christian too. Like,
right.
It's good Christian value. It's also good leadership value. I find that fairly interesting.
I just want to say good morning to Vince too, because we are really strong. Vince from Connecticut, very strong with bald people. I'm just saying.
Vince needs to get a happier LinkedIn picture. I think that one looked like he was mad the day they
totally agree. I was thinking the same thing.
I think you're pretty handsome, Vince. Don't listen to these haired gentlemen.
He just looks grumpy.
There.
You can be grumpy and handsome.
Well, no, that's what we do. That's why we cultivate the grumpy bald guy look. It's kind of the thing. Okay, so I hear you, which is it's okay for us to show up as ourselves so long as we create space. Robert, is that a fair way?
Yeah, because when you show up as yourself, if yourself is a bad person, then you got a problem. Right?
It's a very good point.
Yeah,
you got to be authentic. But what if you're an ass? Like,
right. See, the reason why we can't talk about religion or politics at work is because of all the bad behavior of the people who've done it in the past. And so we're just going to say, well, okay, you can't talk about that. Then you can't talk about this and you can't talk about that. Then eventually you can't talk about the Cowboys, whether you like them or not. You can't talk about Luka being traded to the Lakers because everyone's offended. And it's
from DFW, apologies, man. There's been some big stuff going on in your sports world.
Yeah, and you would not believe how many people on LinkedIn are typing these vehement, angry conversations between people on LinkedIn, like it's X, like they're just battering back and forth about Luka. It's crazy. But I can show up at work and tell you what I ate for dinner, and no one gets offended. I can show up and tell you about the project I'm doing at home with a garden that we're making in the backyard. No one gets offended. All these things we're allowed to talk about. Why? Because we haven't done them wrong. I haven't yelled at you because you don't have a garden like I do. I haven't yelled at you because you don't eat the food I eat. So until someone does it wrong, we kind of let things roll. But in principle, everything could be done wrong if you do it wrong the wrong way.
It's fair. I'm just going to create a company where it's only bald people. And
Oh, Curtis joined the call.
Curtis, yeah. Thank you, Curtis.
You said bald person. I thought of Curtis right away.
Yeah, man, right. Curtis, it's pretty good. So what I'm getting from the frame, like opening this conversation, I want to talk about politics later because religion, in some facets, religion's actually a little bit easier to embrace here than the notion of politics because, and I'll ask the question in a moment, but with religion, you're saying that we need to create psychological safety. Famously, the most famous team study of all time, Project Aristotle, they did at Google. They studied high-performing teams. The number one corollary between high-performing teams was psychological safety. Right?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
this sense that you can create an environment where people feel safe to show up as their whole selves.
But psychological safety is not created by telling people what they can't talk about. It's created by creating an environment where people are free to talk about everything. And so we're doing it wrong. If you really want psychological safety, I have to make rules of engagement. There was a really the 13th richest man in the world was Ray Dalio. I don't know if he still is anymore.
Yeah. He wrote Principles.
He wrote Principles. Yeah. He told his employees, when you get hired, every single room in this building is recorded 24 hours a day, including the bathroom. So if you're going to talk smack about somebody, it's going to be recorded. Someone is going to hear about it. So don't. So what you'd think is like that would be oppressive, like, oh, we can't tell you anything at work. But instead it just said, look, own what you're going to say. If you're going to talk crap about Chris, Chris is going to hear about it. So you better be really to stand behind something. And we learned to create a culture where we respected one another. And we spoke truth. Now, as a Christ follower, we're told to speak truth in love. But if you just speak truth, you can be just rude. So there's a difference if you do truth in love, but you can create a culture where all these biblical principles drive the behavior. We don't even have to quote scripture or verses. Just say, be honest. What religion doesn't want honesty? What religion doesn't say you're supposed to be nice to people? I don't know any religion that says go and be horrible to people. They have different views about the world, but they're all about grace and peace and mercy and love and kindness. Every religion I've ever heard of does that stuff. So why wouldn't we take those attributes and let them be all over our company? Because that's how we want to roll anyway.
Have you heard of the religion of the Great Spaghetti Monster?
I have not.
Yeah, it's look it up. It's a terrific one. It's a farce, but was terrific.
Don't talk about that one. That one you can't talk about.
So the challenge with what you just said, Robert, and even in saying that, and I just want to ask the question to both of you, because just to be clearly honest, Anthony, you're a Christian. Robert, sounds like you're a Christian as well.
Yeah.
There are people whose connotations who have not felt welcome in a Christian society, who have not felt what you're talking about and being inclusive and welcoming.
Yeah.
And even sometimes those mentions of Christian themes can alienate a group of people that don't feel aligned with what you're talking about, which is not inherently bad, but there are some things where Christianity has gotten it wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the way we treated people is the problem with why we can't bring things up. We often let our comfort drive our convictions. I'm uncomfortable with homosexuals, so I will talk about how bad they are. I'm uncomfortable with the guy with the tattoo, so I'll talk about how bad it is. My comfort drives my convictions. And what we've got to do is stop being those kind of people who will put our thumb down on people just because we don't like it. What we need to do is model what Christ did. He hung out with all people, everybody. He gave everybody a chance. And if we're going to create a place where it's psychological safety, we just need to model it. And if I treat you in such a way that you feel loved, respected, cared for, protected, then my faith is still able to be my faith, and you don't feel oppressed by it because the way I behaved has been such a support to you that you do feel safe. I've had people tell me you're the only Christian guy I ever met that I liked.
Sure.
I mean, that makes me feel proud, but it's sad that everyone else I've ever met, this is why they hate Christians, because they have such a bad experience with them. But to have them say, you're the only guy I've ever met that was a Christian that I liked. I'm thankful that I could be that one guy. Let's see if we can get more people to do it.
You guys are the only people with hair that I've ever liked. So, mostly, I don't like people with hair. Anthony, the problem here is that the moment that we crack the door open, and if I come in and say I can control because I know and I've got enough self-awareness and enough emotional intelligence to say I can show up with these values, I'm also opening the door. This is the slippery slope argument, but it's a real one, which is are we now sort of opening a place where my employees, my team members can show up and not model that same sense of openness? And so sometimes it's just easier for me as a founder to be like, look, no, we don't bring this up at work. It's just easier and safer. And I can say this is what I value, but it has nothing to do with religion or politics, because those things really just open up a place where, man, it can get messy. So Anthony first, and then I want to ask that same question to you, Robert.
I think this is a really precarious question. I'll give you a real example. So I had in my last company, we had conservatives and very liberal people working for the organization, and some of the people felt threatened by the other. And when I say threatened, the ideas themselves were threatening to the other group. And fundamentally, they were asking me to shut this person down. They were just saying, don't bring this stuff at work. And so having a conversation with this individual, this was a kind individual. I mean, to go back to Robert's point, kindness, it leads with kindness and love. And this person was not being judgmental. He wasn't being threatening. He was just saying, like, he brought a copy of the Constitution and handed out a small pocket Constitution to everybody. and
How
he was doing
dare he?
I know it was really interesting in that it was he was just he wanted people to understand the framework by which we live in, right? It was a genuine kind gesture where it wasn't threatening, and that could have been threatening, but you have to get to know the individual and what the motivations are, and maybe coach that person on how he can be less threatening. But I chose not to shut him down, and instead say, this is the environment that we're choosing to live in an environment where you get to speak your mind, and you're treated with respect. And as long as it comes from a kind place, that's the environment we work in. And some folks left because that was too uncomfortable for them. And in truth, in hindsight, it was positive for the culture that they left. It was positive for the rest of the team because other people that were feeling uncomfortable by their uncomfort,
Yeah, that's right.
all of a sudden became like, oh, okay, so I can actually speak my mind in a safe environment. So shutting people down for their ideas and not for their attitude it just sets an environment that you ultimately kind of implodes in on itself.
Robert,
You
I
hired-
want to pose this to you, but I just want to ask the question too, just to pose it, which is, do you have to explicitly as a founder at this point, when you say like, hey, this is the culture I'm trying to build, is one to say, hey, we express and openly support whatever your value system is?
You are doing that by the way you treat people all the time. It is you watch your behavior and that's how you learn how people are. But we want people to bring 100% of them to work. My trait, my skill at the IT department, my skill in the sales department, whatever thing I have is made more valuable to the whole company when I'm allowed to be me in my entirety. So when I'm in a meeting, I'm Robert Hunt. I'm talking about all the journey I've had my whole life that comes to the party, not just the skill I have that I was hired for. And if you really want to have a company that is creative and robust, you have to invite everyone and create a safe environment. But safe, you'll never make everybody at the same level of safety because of their own journey. We all walk around with this big giant bag of crap over our shoulders, which is the bad boss we had before, the marriage that failed, the abusive parents. All that stuff comes with to work with us every day. So you as a founder, you must create a place where there is safety, but you will never be able to meet each person's definition of safety, or each person's definition of being respected, or each person's definition of being loved. You're going to have to do the best you can to create a platform where we give grace to one another, but we need them to speak boldly and bring their creativity to the party, to be a contrarian and say, well, that's not how I roll because I worry about that. Well, that feedback is something that the society could be looking at our product that way. We need to know how you think. If you put someone have a restriction on what they can talk about, you're losing the value of that employee.
Curtis says, I'm sure you have to say it. I'm not sure you have to say it, but it means more when you show it. That guy is so smart. He's so smart.
He is very smart. He is very smart.
Handsome. Really, truly handsome. So what I'm hearing you, and I want to go back to the thing I teach in my class, which is I start with the 5 dysfunctions of team, and famous book, classic book that almost every manager should read. Failure to have disagreements or failure of conflict is one of the core. Failure of trust is the first one, but then failure of conflict is a result of failure of trust. And one of the core things, Anthony, which is it is so critical for every single founder to understand, is when there's constructive and healthy conflict, you will have better outcomes.
That's
when
right.
people disagree,
That's right.
you'll have better outcomes. And so, Anthony, first of all, do you agree with that? And then second of all, how do I, as a founder, start to embrace that concept, even sometimes if it makes me uncomfortable?
I think so. Ironically, my favorite phrase on this is something I heard from my pastor at church, and he said, "Success and comfort are not compatible." And I really like that positioning of it. Like if you want to be comfortable, go on vacation. Work and a job is not a place for you to be comfortable. It's a place where you're supposed to be growing and you're supposed to butt up against your beliefs about certain things. And this, I'm not talking about politics or religion. I'm talking about the product and your competition in the market and
Cash
all of
flow,
those things. And
inventory control.
if you start to limit what you're allowed to have a conversation about,
Right.
people start to like self-censor, which is the worst thing for an organization and for its employees to have.
So, Robert, I think that this boils down, and I'm asking the question, but I think I've got this right, is that truly the values that you hold as a founder are the values that you want to bring into the company, but those need to be inclusive values. You can say, look, I show up in this way. This is who I am, but I welcome your counter values. And together our values will create the culture of the company. Did I sum that up correctly?
I had a client who was doing aircraft industry supplies, and he had a company he worked for that was brutal, and their culture was brutal, and they were famous for having fights, physical fights in meetings where they would punch each other, and he loved it, and he thought this was amazing. And now this is a guy I met 10 years ago, so I don't know if that would still fly in today's world, but you can do your culture whatever you want it to be. It's your company. But you're going to attract the kind of people who will thrive in that environment. Someone who's offended by you being offended probably would not survive at that company very quickly. And so you have to be able to decide as a founder, what do I want my company to look like? Usually it is mirroring the values of the founder, yes. And how you go about instilling those out is by how you model it. But I think that that's the choice. You attract the kind of people who will thrive in your culture by the way you set up to treat and behave with each other.
I think so. I think this is probably the easier part of the conversation, but I want to flip to the harder part of the conversation, which the harder part of this conversation is politics. And I think it's harder because we have a political system in the United States where there's a winner and a loser. And everybody sort of starts to get on this train of like, which train are you on? And one person's going to win and one person's going to lose. I mean, it's similar, Robert, to being a Cowboys fan or a Broncos fan or whatever else. It's like, we set our identity with this tribe of people, and it becomes part of our identity. And then, but somebody's gonna lose.
Yeah,
it's just the way it goes. And in this, we're pretty clearly divided as a country right now. Right about 50-50. And so, roughly half the people in this country are going to be disappointed and upset and hurt. And so, I find it really difficult to find a place where I'd be like, look, politics is completely open and you can come in and you can gloat if your person wins and you can be pissed off if your person loses. Help me get my head wrapped around politics, because I simply can't figure out a way in today's climate where you can let that door open and have it be constructive in your company.
Yeah, but that will lead to another topic that you can't talk about and another topic you can't talk about. So you've got to create a way to do that. If we're going to have the political conversation and someone's going to win and someone's going to lose, it really does come down to how do we treat one another through that process. Your core values dictate you don't come in and gloat when your guy won. My core values are show love, serve beyond expectations, pursue excellence, be real, and have fun. Those are my 5 core values that I live out in my business. When my guy won the election, I did not go to my son who voted for the other person and rub it in his face, because that doesn't show humility. And I want to serve and I want to show love. And so you do things as a company to dictate the performance of the people that you have in your team. And some of your core values have to dictate that we don't do stuff like that. And then you have to live them out. You can't just have them as a sticker on a poster on the wall. You have to have conversations and practice it and correct and fire and hire and mark up people based on how they do or don't follow your core values to make it a real safe environment. But there can't be any topic we can't talk about if we're going to really engage people to be their best and to bring in their best part of themselves to the equation.
Yes, though, but I get it what Robert's saying, Anthony. But the moment that we do that, somebody is going to say something shitty. Oh man, it's been like 3 episodes since I cussed.
You cussed. Yep.
$1 in a jar.
Right. Somebody's going to say something bad and offensive, and somebody else is going to get their feelings hurt. And then suddenly we've got tribes and we've got divisiveness.
But that stuff happens all the time anyway.
Yeah.
Even not about the topic of politics. We talk about what sodas are in the fridge. Why do we have Coke instead of Pepsi? People are going to be uptight. They're just going to be uptight. You have to create a place where people don't get butt hurt about every topic that rolls across the conference table.
And there's an and to that. The and is the person that's gloating or saying something to purposefully get under their skin. That you don't set a policy that you can't talk about this. You set that you do your job as a leader. You set that individual down and go through the values of the company and say, hey, how could you have said that differently to model the values that we value in this company? Right. You do the job and you manage the individual, not the policy. I think this is a common mistake I see bigger organizations have. It's like something goes wrong and they're like, all right, we need a new policy. It's like, no, get your leader to do their job and talk to the individual about, don't do that again. That's the best way to handle things like that.
I still think it's funny because, we're a show and, we care deeply about small and growing companies and about founder-led companies. I do think it's so hard as you start to scale up a company, though, because you get this wildly different backgrounds and different religions and nationalities and ethnicities. And all
if it was easy, then everybody would do this job. Like it's supposed to be hard, and you can't decouple politics from your company. Politics impact trade. OSHA requirements. There's so many things that involve political decisions that impact your company and the employees that work there. You can't not care about politics and how it's going to impact and how you plan for if this person gets in office, here's how we're going to adjust our business. Right. It's a part of the world that you live in. You can't decouple it.
Yeah. And if we're going to have diversity in our workplace, we really need diversity of all perspectives, not just diversity of the ones that are trendy. We need to have the counterintuitive on all sides of the equation. So it's a round diversity. And that comes back to your job as a founder, is to create a safe environment and encourage disagreement, encourage transparency and honesty, encourage the respect for one another. Those principles you drive as a leader, and you hire people and you fire people based on them doing or not doing those principles. But we just don't make another law to work around things because it's awkward. We're not helping people bring the best version of themselves to work every day.
I think it's well said. I want to hit just one more. I just want to press down on this point one more time, and then we'll get into the speed round, which is the people are going to show up hurt. People are going to show up if and I'll use a silly analogy, but let's play with it because it's Super Bowl week, which is if I care deeply about one of the teams and they're my teams, and if that team loses, it's going to feel bad. And I'm going to show up to work on Monday feeling pretty lousy and probably hungover. And so, as I show up on Monday, what are the actions that I, as a founder, can take just to immediately say, hey, we're all good here. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. Address it honestly and celebrate the victory for the people who wanted that team to win, and then get back to work. And, I think we make this into too big a deal because there's a thing every day. There's a thing that could come up every day. And we have to practice the ability to have open and honest communication and then move on. And so, celebrate. Hey, congratulations to the Chiefs. That was a great game. Sorry for those who lost your money and your bets, and let's get to work and move on. I think that's how you make it a way that we acknowledge what's true, but we also acknowledge that we have a job to do and we need to get back to doing that.
But in this scenario, I'm just going to press on it one more point, Anthony. That Chiefs identity has become a huge part of my personality.
The Chiefs?
I love the Chiefs to such a degree. I'm a Broncos fan. I freaking hate the Chefs. But in this analogy that I'm playing out, this team has become so much a part of my identity. And I so identify as this thing.
It's funny. Companies, it's not just about the founder. Companies are founded on beliefs like that. I mean, the famous story about Kraft, why the reason why Kraft was founded? It was founded based on Kraft created cornflakes because it reduced passion. The flavorless cereal reduced passion.
Right. It would lower the passion.
it was designed to lower the amount of sexual immorality. Like it was literally a religious belief that founded the entire company.
Really?
And to this day, Kraft cornflakes have no flavor to them. So I don't know if it worked or
in
not.
my household, Anthony. So I don't really have.
That's probably the same guy who invented muumuus. That does the same thing. Trying to rein in all the passion.
I'm gonna do my very best here to kind of say that Vince, thank you. Vince says he's a Raiders fan, and my identity of being somebody who does not like the Chiefs is kind of under siege right now. I want to try to sum this up, and we'll get to the speed round, Robert. What you're suggesting here is that it's okay for you to have an identity of a religious person, or it's okay for you to have a political identity. It's okay for that. Underneath that, values are the things that drive the company, and making sure that you're consistent with those values. But most importantly, creating a place where there's an open, trusting, safe environment where everybody can show up with their own values as well.
Yeah. And we're always going to have an issue. A lot of it comes around an employee that we like more than another employee. And then we start to take sides and we build silos. And when these things go on every topic you can imagine, we have to aggressively as founders model and promote and train and reinforce the values and the behavior that we expect in an organization, or we'll spend all our time jacking around with one argument, one conflict, one attitude after another. It's exhausting. You want to increase productivity? Build a team that respects one another and is allowed to be themselves, honestly who they are, and be able to bring the best version of them to work every day. Then you'll see productivity go up.
I unfortunately think that we're a episode attracting bald people, and I think we're just getting Raiders fans. Which is really hard for my identity as a Broncos fan. I'm feeling under attack right now. This is feeling very threatening.
It's funny how the podcast episode for religion and politics has devolved into football.
Raiders and bald people.
Right. Oh, it's really true. My joke always is undoubtedly if humanity were to completely be removed from the planet and an archaeologist would show back up 5,000 years from now, an alien archaeologist, they'd be like, that religion of football was pretty big. Because the biggest buildings that we create were football stadiums. So
Anthony, do your separation joke, because separation between work and religion, I think it's a perfect way to end it.
Oh, you're going to force me. Okay, now I have to, Chris. Sorry. So I read a meme yesterday on X that I started. Before we aired, I said, should I do this? So I'm going to do it. So I can't decide if butt cheeks is one word or two, so I'm going to separate it.
What a terrific way to get into the speed round. Thank you, Robert and Anthony. We are now show up.
Sorry, I had to do it.
Devolved into dad nut jokes, terrific, which is a very good description of this show. All right, Robert, speed round. Values first or profits first? Is it more important to be a company built on values, or is it more important to have a profitable company?
Values.
Public stance or private conviction?
Public.
Written policy or case-by-case basis?
Written.
Personal social media, separate or integrated? Ooh, good one.
Integrated.
Team events. Can I have any religious type events in my team events, or do they all have to be secular?
No, you can have religious activities at your team events.
Really, really terrific and interesting conversation. I really appreciate you helping us create this space here, Robert. I think it was a very good conversation. What did you learn from this episode, Anthony?
This is great. Again, was really looking forward to the episode. The things that I have is culture begins with good, healthy communication. Encourage diversity of thought. Those that are unkind, manage them individually and appropriately. And the other thing that we really touched on was, as the founder, it's your job to be the calm in the storm. It's your job not to go off the rails with anger or frustration. If something doesn't go your way, you kind of have to stuff that a little bit. And I mean, you can say that you're disappointed, but if you go off the rails, you're teaching everybody else that they can go off the rails as well.
That's right.
It's funny. The thing that kept on popping in my head through this conversation is that you need to be an adult. You need to be a grown up.
Exactly
right.
right.
And you need to have enough emotional and self-control to say, when your team wins in politics, yay, screw you all. You can't do that. You need to be an adult.
Not a mature attitude.
Right. Deep dive. There's some good ones. Good to great always. We just have that on every single episode. The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. Thanks for the feedback by Douglas Stone. Robert, tell us about your book. Any other recommendations you have for us on this topic or any others as far as how to develop as a leader? And most importantly, where can we find and follow you and tap into your clear amounts of wisdom here?
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. My book is called Nobody Cares Until You Do. It's about accountability. It's about building a culture of accountability with your team where people own it. That's the definition of accountability. They're not blaming. They're not making excuses. They're not saying they can't do anything to make it better or just waiting and hope it gets better. They're doing something about it. They own it. We want a team like that. But I'll tell you that this is a reminder in this conversation. Most leaders I know don't do what they really want to do. They've given up. They had problems. They tried to do it in the past. It didn't work out. I'm now talking about religion at work. I'm not even caring about people's personal problems because last time I did it blew up in my face and everyone wanted me to care about them and I don't have the bandwidth and I don't like that guy anyway. I mean, they just get jaded after a while. Don't give up. Don't give up on your dream. You started this company because of a vision you had. Go back to that vision and follow that. And if you've been kicked in the groin a few too many times and you feel like you just can't take one more chance, find someone to support you. Be on the side of being vulnerable and transparent. Let your team encourage you. Don't give up on the vision of who you really want to be, the company you really want to run.
I think that is incredibly well said and way to wrap it up. Robert, thank you again so much for coming today. Anthony, what do we have coming up?
Next episode, we are going to be talking about building the path to an enterprise, thinking big and building bigger. And we have John Hewitt of tax fame. So John has built 2 huge tax organizations, tax preparation organizations. So he's going to come and talk about how you leapfrog from small business to big business. I'm really looking forward to that. Robert,
I love the fact that we're talking about religion, politics, and now
taxes.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Again, Robert, you were great. I really appreciate the conversation. Everybody that's listening in and chimed in on the conversation, thank you as well. Go to howtofounder.com to follow us on your favorite channel. For Chris's mental health, if you could leave us a good review on Apple Podcast, he is having a difficult time showing his love and bringing his best self because we're not at a 4.8 on Apple Podcasts. So if I can ask you a favor for Chris,
in which case, we don't really need.
You don't want Raider fans.
Yeah.
We're not.
All right. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.